Hi guys, thanks for tuning into another episode of Nuggets News. Well, two huge news stories unfolding in Australia over the past 24 hours. We're going to dive into both of those today and how they both unfortunately fit into this narrative and agenda that I've warned about is going to be pushed harder and harder by the media. And it was only a week ago when I tweeted that there was a false flagging coming down under in relation to Bibi Netanyahu's comments and that building tension between Australia, Israel and Iran, as well as my March for Australia video talking about how we need to unite as one and how the media is going to be desperate to divide us and spin this in any way people that are pro-Australia, pro-freedom, liberty, sovereignty as the bad guys. So with these false flags, again, I want to be clear, we're not saying that an event didn't happen. We're talking about the deceptive practices of the media and how they spin it to push their agenda and narrative. And I just want to highlight this part here about infeasibility, saying how it's harder to get away with these operations these days due to, digital surveillance and everyone having phones in their pockets. But let's think about the two stories that are unfolding. One's happened rurally, very hard for anyone else to see what's going on, and we don't have all the facts yet, and this is an ongoing situation. And the other story is, a result of military intelligence. And again, the citizens, the average person, there's no way to prove or disprove what's going on in that second story case. So let's dive into this first one. And, firstly, I want to be clear that we don't condone violence, thoughts, prayers, condolences with the family of the two dead police officers. And this is not how we bring about change if you're a student of history, through violence. We have to peacefully come together and unite as one. But Dezi Freeman here, so the thing that was a concern here that was how quickly the media were to label, the sovereign citizen aspect, conspiracy theorist, went down the COVID rabbit hole and this type of thing. But not only that, this is not the first time we've seen a shootout between police and citizens that were labelled, sovereign citizens and religious extremism, radical ideology, this type of thing. The media is so quick to push out. So this is the official story here, that police were executing a warrant for his historical sex abuse allegations. And again, I don't know if there's any truth to any of this yet. We're waiting for more details to come out about this entire story, but there's a lot of things here that don't pass the smell test, or the very least bizarre coincidences. So he's been on the media in the past, in recent years, on a current affair for this fallout with a neighbour, and it was actually the neighbour, not him, with the chainsaw and the dirt bikes and causing these issues. But not only once, but twice, again in 2021, where he's seen being arrested here for pushing back against the draconian COVID lockdowns and mandates and that type of thing. So whenever there's a connection to media or intelligence or that type of thing, you've always kind of got to look into these things a little bit more and see if there's something more at play. The other interesting thing here is that the newly appointed, just weeks ago, Victorian Police Commissioner Mike Bush was actually the officer in charge in New Zealand at the time of those Christchurch shootings, and he's now been brought over to head the Victoria Police. But also, he was the one that approved a $500,000 contract to social media influencers in New Zealand to push pro-COVID memes, follow the rules, or if we don't, we're all going to die, drum up that fear porn at the time as well. So just a couple of interesting connections there for you as well. Now, Jackie Lambie's been quick to condemn sovereign citizens and saying that they abused her and as they're unvaccinated and they should face consequences, and it's up to social media and government to crack down on misinformation. Well, as we all know, most of that misinformation turned out to be entirely true and was actually the correct way that we should have handled things in the past. And this is the real danger of having that government become the sole arbiter of truth. So look, hopefully this whole situation gets resolved peacefully and there's no more bloodshed or deaths, but wait to see what more details come out and again, how the media are going to spin this. But let's move to the next story, and this is in relation to only 6 days ago when Netanyahu sent Albo a letter telling him to resolve this anti-Semitism crisis apparently that we have in Australia, and giving him even a date to get it done by, and blaming Albo for these anti-Semitic attacks. So again, I personally don't think that we have an anti-Semitism crisis in Australia, and we're going to talk about the comparison to what's going on overseas and whatnot as well. But this is just days after Australia also recognised Palestine as a state. And sure enough, we get these intelligence agencies come in and package this story in such a way that they've received intel from, the CIA and Mossad that show that Iran was responsible. So, anyone that says that Israel is manipulating governments with everything that's coming out about AIPAC and Epstein blackmail rings and the leverage that they have over politicians and the media and all this type of thing, you're not allowed to say that. But here they are themselves talking about it and taking credit for getting Australia to expel Iranian diplomats. Now, Bob Carr is an ex-Aussie politician who's been very vocal about this and openly talking about the influence of Israel and the Jewish lobby in Australia. So obviously everything that people have starting to realise is happening in US politics and throughout the West is very apparent here in Australia as well in terms of control of politicians, the media, and so on. So, it's interesting that the police came out and said that these were, the caravan attacks and that staged and fake, and there might have even been foreign influence involved, but they couldn't find any evidence of anti-Semitic motivations. But enter these intelligence agencies, and all of a sudden they are saying that that's what it is. And this is the same ASIO that actually didn't realise we had an Israeli spy in the ADF for 19 years. And why would Iran do this? They've got more than 100 synagogues in their own country where they coexist peacefully in many instances. And in the midst of being on the edge of World War III, nuclear threats, these exchange of missile fires and recently, why on earth would they go halfway around the world and instigate trouble in these countries of allies and these small-scale events? It makes no sense at all for them to do that. And you've got to think about, well, who stands to benefit? And we've already seen the government hand out tens of millions of dollars, to Israel and these synagogues to get rebuilt, this type of thing. So with everything that's happening overseas, this is just such a distraction. So it was only yesterday when we saw a hospital get bombed and kill more journalists, innocent people. Then it was got the double tap where they actually wait for help to arrive and aid workers and people trying to rescue survivors and then bomb them again. And this all unfolded live on TV, and Netanyahu just comes out and said, "Oh, it was a mishap." So we have this, time and time again where it's just an accident. How many of these headlines in recent years and over decades now where killing innocent women, children, this bombing, expansion of territory, and it's all in self-defense and it's all just an accident. It's just insane to see how this is all protected by politicians and the media in the West. And, the answer is expelling the Iranian ambassador when there's been, no one injured, no civilian deaths in Australia or of these incidences. It all looks like it's faked and staged, and there's some hurt feelings that the media are blowing out of proportion, while we're going to cozy up to the people that are, committing this genocide and continue to stand with them. Now, after all this, Netanyahu's come out this morning and said, "Oh, well, guys, you've got to continue to support us because now we've got reason to believe that Iran's not only got nukes, but they're building intercontinental ballistic missiles. And if you don't stand with us, they're going to be able to nuke all the way to the United States and all of Europe and this type of thing." So again, who believes this stuff at this point? It is just crazy. Now, Australia is unfortunately deeply tied into all of this militarily as well, where we're now touted as a future weapons supplier, $21 billion plan to get involved in this. So very, very sad to see the direction of it. We should be staying out of foreign wars. We've got so much that needs to be fixed at home. Why are we giving away money and this type of thing? Sad to see. Now, once again, this is all on the backdrop of these narratives and agendas that we're pushing and hurling towards December, where they want to roll out this digital ID. Now, thankfully, we've got senators like Alex Saunders that's pushing back and trying to scrap the government's digital ID plan. Sarah Game was another fantastic one, the only poly in South Australia there to push back against this emergency management amendment bill. Now, I'll let you pause the screen and have a read of this, but this is really scary stuff, and it's going to override other state laws and your personal rights to ensure compliance. They can break into your house, your car, whatever, take your possessions. They can even order people to isolate. These are just crazy draconian measures that none of us voted for. Politicians are meant to represent the people, and they are just passing these globalist agendas to take away all your freedoms and liberties. And anyone that goes against the official globalist narrative, they're expanding these laws and definitions to label more and more people domestic terrorists. And with the backdrop of what is going on in the US with martial law, as well as this rolling out of this Palantir AI surveillance system where they're actually using drones, and the AI will determine whether or not your social media posts are a threat. And we've seen this being used already throughout this Gaza Middle East conflict, where the AI and the drones are just going and shooting people and whatever if they determined by the algorithm, that you are a threat. So scary stuff. The only way we push back against this agenda is to unite as one, realize that the media are trying to divide us and cause rage and anger, protest peacefully, come together. And knowledge is power. Learning what is really going on and who is really to blame is the best way to defeat this media propaganda globalist machine. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Smash that like button, share it around, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.